All right, so it is that time. Um, 8 p.m. So hopefully some people will be trickling in, but I'll just jump right in with our presentation this evening. Hello, my name is Genevieve. I am your friendly neighborhood sister girl with the sister locks. Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with the Black mental health crew and peeps about this important topic. So happy Black Mental Health Week. I mean, it is an amazing accomplishment to have focus in this particular area for our particular demographic and to focus on mental health, which has traditionally been quite of a stigma and not necessarily something that we've focused on or paid attention to or um, sort of highlighted as a priority for us. So it's fantastic to be a part of this movement where we have Black Mental Health Week now. We're all celebrating and we're doing the work to improve our mental, emotional, and relational health, and that contributes to our overall well-being. So, great to be part of this movement. This week, we are going to be, we've been talking about a lot of things. I've seen a lot of flyers. I've seen a lot of different people that I know in the city doing a lot of talks on very important topics, and it's been amazing. I've seen, humor and healing and Black men's mental health and men's mental health and all these different things. So it's been amazing to be a witness and a participant in this movement. So today we're talking about reclaiming identity and our mental health. And so it's important to know that our identity um, is, let me just include some folks. Okay. It's important to note that our identity is important to our mental health. Hey peeps, how y'all doing? Welcome, welcome to the space. Good to have you guys here with us. Um, so, yeah, it's totally important to make sure that we have a strong sense of identity when it comes to building up our mental health. So, we're going to be talking about how sound identity is to our mental, emotional, and relational health today. Happy Black Mental Health Week to those of you who've just joined us. Our agenda is as follows. We're going to look at definitions. We're going to look at SAQs, which are self-awareness questions, and that's just to ground ourselves in our personal experience, so that this can resonate with us, and we can have personal change, personal shifts, personal awareness in our lives from the presentation and the information that we encounter today. So our presentation, and we'll look at Sankofa, which is again or not again, which is a an Adinkra symbol. It's out of the central region of Ghana, which is in West Africa. The Ashanti peoples or the Ashanti tribe traditionally used these principles and these symbols for their own sort of understanding of nature, of themselves, of relationship, of life, and the meaning of life. And I actually found out from a friend of mine who is Ghanaian that they were also used for um, like creating like understanding the stars for creating medicines and treatments for ailments and things like that. They were used for um calculations, mathematical purposes. Like they were actually used for a lot more than just cute little sayings or proverbs that could govern our lives and inform us. So I thought that was interesting too. I read up a little bit more on what they were actually used for. But today we'll be looking at one Adinkra symbol, Sankofa, and then we'll be talking about Say My Name. And Say My Name is specific to using our names as a point of reference or a pillar to ground ourselves in our identity or to reclaim our identity. So our presentation really explores the connection between identity, meaning, mental health, through the lens of like West African heritage, using Sankofa as a principle, which means go back and fetch it. So we'll use all those pieces as a guide to sort of reclaim our past and look towards how we can heal for our future. Okay, so let's jump in. Our definition is identity. Okay. We can't have a conversation about mental health and Sankofa and all these principles and ideals, especially as people who live in melanated skin, without a conversation about identity, right? Our identity contributes to our mental health. So this definition, a simple one, a set of qualities, beliefs, traits, and or expressions that characterize a person or a group. Identity emerges through childhood, and as children, we start to comprehend our self-concept, and this remains consistent with us throughout our different stages of life. And so that's as we grow, as we get married, as we have children, or as we have careers, as we travel, and as we evolve, and all those things. Our identity stays with us. So it's a fundamental building block and foundational understanding of our core self, our core self-worth, our core self-beliefs, and of course, our mental health, right? So what we believe about ourselves and the world contributes to how we feel and how we think, and how we experience life. And that, of course, is connected very closely to our mental health, and it actually contributes to mental illness as well. And so if we have a constantly reinforced understanding of the world that's quite pessimistic or negative, then we lean into, or we have the greater our likelihood is to lean into like depression and anxiety and worry, and those kinds of things take a toll on our health. Right. And not just our mental health, but our physical health as well, right? We know how stress can take a toll on our like our blood sugar levels or our weight gain or things like that. It takes a toll on us. So we want to make sure we understand sort of the fuller breadth of why we're having this conversation, why we're talking about this topic in general, and how it can impact and affect us on a day-to-day, real life, lived experience level, right? And so, I mean, you're frustrated with your dog and your kids and yourself, and you don't like yourself and all these kinds of things. That takes a toll. You go to the doctor, they're like, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, um, you have low this, low that, you know, all these kinds of ailments, right? Like di or diagnoses. Those are contributing to our general sense of well-being in our lives. So this is our self-awareness question, and I love this question because it's so broad, and we can take it in so many different directions, right? Who are you? Our mental health um, is quite dependent on the stories that we tell ourselves, on the narratives that we build, on the perspectives that we create for ourselves or that we choose to lean into and pay attention to over other perspectives. And so if I'm a Black woman in society and I take on the negative stereotypes and messagings that the Western world gives me, then that can have the impact of eroding my mental health. Oh man, I'm a terrible person. Oh man, like I'm just this. I'm only this. I can only achieve so much. This is the ceiling for me, or I have to present a certain way to be accepted, to be acceptable, or to be liked, right? So that can take a toll on our mental health. And so, how we answer this question gives us insight into some of the stories and narratives that we've been telling ourselves or that we've adopted, some of the belief systems that we have, and then how they're impacting us. So, who are you? Like, oh, I'm this kind of person, I'm this person. And how does that actually feel on the inside? Like, oh man, I don't really like that. I don't really like that kind of person that I am or that I've chosen to be or that I've adopted messaging around, right? So think about it. Think about the question, who are you? And think about it in this way. What are some of the first things that you share about yourself, right? And we'll be getting into the name thing, but what are some of the first things that you share about yourself? Um, and what do those things represent for you? Right? So if I look in the mirror and I say, oh, Genevieve, who are you? What do I come up with? And do I say the same things to myself if I ask myself the question as I say to other people if they ask me the question? Right? So is my answer to the question when other people ask similar to or aligned with the answer to the question when I ask? Right? So this is not like, who do other people say that I am? No, this is not like, who do other people expect me to be or want me to be? No, it's more, who do I say that I am? If someone asks me the question, what's the answer that I give? I'm a therapist. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. what do I say, right? Like I'm a mother, I'm an aunt, I'm a wife. What do I say about myself? And what do those things that I say about me, say about what I value, say about what I think is important? And again, is it different when I answer the question inside of myself? Right. So, how we decide define ourselves to ourselves versus to others is super important to note. Right. So, I think, oh, if I ask myself the question, I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, who am I? Well, I'm Genevieve. Like, I don't know who's Genevieve. I show up in the world in a particular way. Genevieve is the person who's passionate about relationships, and I am, the kind of person who shows up and wants to be intentional about her relationships and connections with other people, values other people, loves other people. Okay, that is that who I am? Yeah, I think that's a part of who I am. But if somebody asks me who are you, Jen? Like I'm probably gonna say something like, oh, I'm a therapist and all these sort of like arbitrary criteria that people may want to know or might find interesting about me, right? So think about it. Think about how you introduce yourself to others. Think about how you speak about yourself to yourself, um, and some of the things that come up because there's a place where we can access the truth about how we feel. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable. I remember doing work years ago and like I would come up with some like I would say stuff like, "Oh man, you never do anything right. Nothing ever works out for you. You're always messing things up. Like you're not smart. Like you're always confused about things. You always get things slower than other people." And there would just be so many things that I would say about myself to myself. And then I kept thinking, like, is that who I am? Like, is that who I am to me? Am I this like, unkind, unsmart, undesirable person, like living in the world? And how does that make me feel about myself? Like when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of it, like, am I satisfied with me being how I am or who I am or what I say I am to me, to myself? And a lot of the times we say a lot of things to other people that we don't say to ourselves, and vice versa. And it's important to note the truth because the truth is usually what comes up in those like more quiet spaces, quiet hours of the day, when we're like, oh man, like, am I really who I want to be? Am I really doing what I want to be doing? Is there more? Is there something different? Um, and answering those questions honestly, right? And being willing to confront the discomfort or being willing to confront the choices that we've made that have led us in a direction that is actually not where we want to be. It's not aligned with what we desire in our lives, or it's put us in precarious positions, right? Like I think about it. I do some of these fancy and fun conversations and speaking engagements, and I hate bios. I think they're just so limiting because it's like it doesn't tell the story of who I want to be, right? And there's a reason why I introduce myself the way that I do, right? To me, it's important for you to know that I am a human being first, right? I'm your friendly sister, I'm your friendly neighborhood sister girl with the sister locks. Like I'm your neighbor, I'm your sister, I am friendly, I'm yours, right? I'm here with you as a human being. We're doing this thing together. I'm giving you a glimpse into my identity and connecting you to my values when I say that, versus like I am this sort of sterile, um, you know, thing, like this therapist, this like what I do instead of like functional, more relational. And it's exposure and it's vulnerability, but it gives you access to me. Um, on a level that I think is important for building connection. And the this directly connects back to like the principle of identity, right? Because identity is built from connection, connecting with a particular group, a particular ethos, a particular cultural standpoint, particular set of values, and so on. And so it's important for us to ground ourselves in something, and so many of us have like lost or given up who we really are or replaced who we really are with what we think others want us to be or think we should be or expect us to be. And I believe that it's it's important for us to do this work that we're going to talk about today, this Sankofa work, right? Because I think Sankofa is go back and get it, right? I think um, so many of us may not even be aware of the cost of the toll that it's taking on us to let go of a lot of things we've let go of that are really resonant to us, right? We don't always recognize that there's a large cost in sacrificing the ways in which we have have um yeah, in the ways of which we've learned to be maybe. And sometimes we kind of hide, especially when we're in certain environments with other cultural groups. Um other cultural groups. When we're in racialized environments, we are more free, I should say. And sometimes it's easier to hide or even present one side of ourselves, code switching when we're in certain environments and so on. So it's a good conversation for us to have when we think about um, the cost that it's taking and how we can reclaim, some of the pieces of ourselves that we've been either forced or encouraged or chosen to give up because of the environments that we've lived in or the lives that we've had to live. I read a statistic a couple of weeks back. It was about a Black woman in corporate environments having to code switch or having to change and contort themselves to make others comfortable. And this was Canada, US studies that were done with Black women in predominantly white spaces where there's not a lot of representation. So straightening their hair, softening their tone, like the tone of their voice, trying to be speaky spokey, like trying to eliminate their accents if they have one. And, primarily with like people from the West Indies or from the Caribbean, from Africa, trying to get rid of their accents. And I remember my mom, hey mom, I know my mom's on here. My mom, my mom coming to this country and she, wanting to working really to give up her accent in 2.5 seconds flat. She was like, I got to get rid of this accent. So I would hear her like on the phone or even when I'd visit her at work and she'd be speaky spokey, but have more of a accent and be more free to speak like herself, like in environments where our family was or where she was at church or what have you. And I think about those things like those almost instinctive, reflexive behaviors that we do, and it contrasted so much with like my dad. My dad is, hardback Nigerian man, um Nigerian chief, but like he would not change his accent for any, like, till today. Like how are you? Like he's just like himself, he'd be loud, he'd be grinning, he'd be, his accent to this very day. Like he wouldn't even probably dream of trying to get rid of his accent. No, like never, not ever, and I think about like just simple things like that, that we give up and that we release or that we are willing to, yeah, just kind of let go of to make people feel comfortable in the spaces that we're in. And I understand that by default, making others comfortable can make us comfortable, because we don't have to push back, we don't have to feel unsafe or, feel that like pressure to conform or feel the 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 pain of like disapproval or lack of acceptance, or when people don't like us or when they look at us like side eye and they think we're strange because we eat differently, different foods and whatever. So I get it that sometimes making others uncomfortable and letting go of some of the pieces of and parts of ourselves can make us comfortable or more comfortable in certain environments, but the long-term toll that it takes is what I'm thinking about and considering as it pertains to our mental health and our emotional health and our relational health. And does some of that internalized messaging of diminishing pieces of ourselves, like our accents or our skin tone or our textured hair or what have you, does that then turn into um, self-hatred and then hatred for others who are like us, right? Can that turn into, and that's, yes, worst case scenario, right down the line, but thinking about it, it's like if you deny something enough or internalize a message about a thing's lack of worth or lack of value, and it's within us, then that can turn into dislike or hate, for that, or disdain, or disgust, or contempt for that thing, right? And I remember seeing a study, it was a while ago, it was these babies, and they were given like dolls, black dolls, white dolls, or whatever, and they were to point out like which doll is a good doll and which doll is a nice doll and which doll is a kind doll and whatever. And invariably these kids, I mean, I'm talking babies, like they're like 3 years old or whatever. Invariably, they would point to like the white doll's the good doll, the black doll's the bad doll, and whatever. And then the researcher would ask like the black children, like, doesn't that doll look like you? Like the doll that you pointed to, that's the bad doll. That's wrong or whatever. Doesn't that doll look like you? And these kids, like I'm talking 3 years old, like young kids, they would just start crying. Like just that recognition, that impact of that message, of that truth. Like I'm pointing to this doll, recognizing that society tells me, and the messaging that I've received everywhere has told me that this is the bad one and I'm that one. Oh my God, like the weight of that as a child and the weight of that we carry day to day, right? And so asking ourselves these questions and recognizing that as we introduce ourselves, as we say who we are, as we identify who we are, we make a choice. And it's a hard one because there's always a cost that's involved. We make a choice to highlight certain parts of ourselves, keep certain parts of ourselves, and perhaps get rid of, cut off, hide, um, or devalue certain parts of ourselves, right? So who are you? Who are you? Do you like you? Um, you know, maybe do this for me. If you if you know what your name means, tell it to me in the chat. And we're going to be talking specifically about names today and how they can help us identify um, how we are and who we are. All right, so that's our self-awareness question for today. I feel like we went off on a whole wonderful tangent. That's great. I love it. Oh, comment in the chat. I love chat messages, by the way. So if you guys can throw messages in the chat, I would love to read them. Let me know who's in the room, where you're at, what you're thinking about, what questions you may be asking yourselves, or what answers you might be coming up with. That would be great too. Jojo, hey, how you doing? Oh yes, 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 absolutely. So in the past, yeah, Canadians would pretend that they didn't understand the accent of people from the West Indies. Yes, absolutely. So many changed their accents quickly, and I think it was more of being understood a thing than a fitting in thing. But I think being understood is about fitting in. I think that's part of it, right? It's about recognizing that the way that you present naturally is not fully embraced by the place where you are, by the environment that you're in, by the people that you're with, right? And we want to be understood. We want to be heard. We want to be worth the inconvenience, so to speak, the inconvenience of my accent, you leaning in and being diligent enough, or recognizing that I'm worth it enough for you to listen closely, if you listen closer if you need to, and get and grasp what I'm saying, or ask for meaning, ask for clarity if you don't get what I'm saying, but rather than ask me to assimilate, to change, to contort, to lean into you, right? And I get there's an exchange there, but there's a specific power differential that exists when it comes to those of us who live in melanated skin and perhaps do not come from, the background of dominant culture. And this is not just, I'm not talking just Black folk. I mean, we've seen assimilation and colonization all over the world, right? So I'm talking about non-dominant culture and versus dominant culture. Okay. And yes, I do think there's value in striving to be understood. And I think that speaks directly to the question of cost and identity and mental health. Because if we value being understood more than these other pieces that we have to let go of, other pieces of ourselves that we have to let go of, then we also have to recognize that there's a cost to that and be willing to pay that, be willing to make the sacrifice for that, right? And it's really just about awareness. It's about awareness of the toll that it can take and taking ownership of that. And we if we don't see it and don't notice, we may not realize how it erodes, how it takes it, like how it takes from us at the end of the day, right? And then we end up like sad and depressed, and we're like, oh man, I can't be my authentic, real, true, transparent self, and I can't be vulnerable, I can't be open, I can't be all these things that connect me to other people, um, because I have shame attached, or because I have guilt attached, or because I have anger attached, to these pieces. That's the mental emotional health that we're talking about, right? We want to be able to move to a sense of well-being, of clarity, of openness, and of understanding. So. So yeah, yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your for the feedback. Okay, Sankofa, go back and get it. So I visited Ghana early this year, and I learned about the Adinkra symbols. Sankofa is one of the most common ones. We talked about the Ashanti peoples and how they've designed these historical and philosophical symbols with lots of meaning. And so Sankofa is one of my favorites, and I love it because it tells us to go back and get it, right? So if we've forgotten anything today, if we're like, did you forget your keys? Sankofa. Did you forget your coffee? Sankofa, right? I use this randomly when I'm just walking around now. It's Sankofa. It's just a great word. It's like Mufasa. Say it again, right? So I love it in terms of its semantics, but I also love it in terms of its relevance. Its relevance to today, right? Maybe it includes um the historical meaning, right? Like the not maybe it includes the historical meaning of learning from our past, of going back to our past and reclaiming the pieces of our past so that we can build a stronger future. But it's also super like it's super present for today. It's like it's linked to our oh there we go. It's linked to our ability to recognize that something was forgotten or lost that is worth going back for, right? I remember growing up. It wasn't like sexy to be African. It wasn't lucrative to be African. We didn't have no Afro beats and all these dances, and everybody's learning African dance and all this kind of thing. And people are buying like African fabrics, and we didn't have all that, right? And so I would try to like whiteify. I mean, Genevieve is a pretty white name, but I would try to whiteify my last name. I remember my dad would say allow. He'd be like allow, and I'd be like, oh, okay, let's figure out how to make it white. And be like, hi, my name is Genevieve Aleo. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. There was a piece of me that was like, I need to distance myself from the Africanness of my name, and I would never tell anybody. I have countless middle names. Okay, they're all African. I would never tell anybody my middle names. Um, but I say that to say that going back and getting it is recognizing that there's something that we've lost or left behind. And for me, I thought about it as going back and getting my sense of like pride in my name, pride in my heritage, pride in my identity. I lost that along the way. I didn't I grew in my home it was fine, but I'm talking about out in society, right? Like I was like no, that's not a thing. And that even that took a toll on my sense of like self-value, self-worth, self-esteem, and so I think it's important for us to just like recognize that there's that piece that's existing in our lived experience, and we can go back and reclaim some of these pieces. So Sankofa is our word for the day. Sankofa is our principle for the day, and I'll talk just a little bit about how it impacts and influences our lives. I believe we are created for relationships, and relationships are the fundamental pillar of our existence, of our fulfillment, of our purpose, and all the things. Okay. So that means identity and meaning play a crucial role in shaping how we build connection with and interact with other people. And it's important for how we show up. If I think I'm great and I'm worthy and all that, I'm going to show up that way. I'm going to be great and worthy in my relationships and so on. And so identity and meaning means that we have like a strong sense of self or not so strong sense of self, and that impacts and influences how we show up. Okay, so if we have a strong sense of self, and I noticed just some pieces here that we can touch on briefly. But if I have a strong sense of self, a strong sense of identity, there's like a pride of who I am, right? And again, if we don't have this, we need to sankofa. We need to go back and get it, and we need to understand some of what we are going back to reclaim, right? And how it shows up in our everyday lives. So what do we want and need? What are we fulfilled by? What offers us um like a good quality of life, good mental health, good emotional health, good relation. What offers us that? Authentic connections offers us that. We have genuine, appreciation and love for one another. We can, compliment one another. We can listen to one another. We can offer feedback to one another. Like those genuine, I'm sure that each of you have encountered some kind of genuine connection or authentic connection in your lives that you've been like, oh man, I really like this. I really like the way that I feel when I'm with this person. Maybe this person has given you a compliment or given you a gift or something, or they've honored you in some way, or they've seen you in some way that others haven't been able to see you, or they've defined you in some way that others maybe have not labeled you. And you've just been like, oh yes, I resonate with that. I connect with that. Oh my God, oh my goodness, that's great. And that kind of connection comes out of a strong sense of self, of who we are, of how we are to be in the world. A strong sense of identity, a strong sense of self, and of course that impacts our mental health exponentially. We feel good in the world. We see things differently. We see the positive. We're able to see the silver lining in the dark clouds, right? We go about the world. We exist in a different way, on a different level. Strong sense of identity also offers us um, the capacity to create and enforce healthy boundaries. We talk a lot about boundaries. I saw a quote the other day. We talk more about boundaries than we do about recovery. I think so. Recovery meaning repair of relationships when relationships go awry. But I think boundaries come out of recovery. I think having healthy boundaries means that we're able to say no when things don't align with our values, and then we're able to renegotiate when we recognize there's a need to do so. And that's again being in relationship with other people. And you know, there's so much, and I talk about hookup culture all the time because I think that hookup culture rubs against a lot of people's values, but they don't either pay attention or they're unwilling to stand for it. So the ways that we do relationship now, like these dating apps, the things that we allow, like ghosting and breadcrumbing and all these different ways of being in a relationship. Like I actually don't think, and people are like, oh, you're a narcissist and you're a narcissist. I don't think people actually want to be in these kinds of toxic entanglements. I think people genuinely want good relationships, but they're unwilling to stand up for the quality that they know they can have and they deserve. And perhaps it sounds lofty as well because a lot of people aren't doing it. So they're like, oh, whatever, that's an unattainable standard, but it's actually not, right? So having a strong sense of identity and self puts you in a position to say yes or no. Like, yes, I will accept this. No, I will not accept this. Yes, I will show up like this. No, I will not show up like this. Right? No, I won't perm my hair just to get a job or a job interview. Right? No, I won't hook up with you before marriage because that's not a thing that I do. Right? No, no, I will not do, extra work because you asked me. No, I'm not doing that. Right? So just being able to know your worth, know your value in a space. Um, uh, chats, breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing is yes, it's a way of doing relationship. I was reading about these terms in the online dating world. Breadcrumbing is when um you give a little bit in a relationship or just enough in a relationship to keep that person sort of fed or coming back for more, but you aren't really interested in pursuing anything long term or in depth with that person. And so you text here and there, you call here and there, you kind of keep them on a chain, right? But it's not anything that's nourishing for them or yourself, really. And so it's like you're giving breadcrumbs. You're just like, here's a little bit of something, that you can munch on or, that can appease you or satisfy you for now. But that's sucky. It's so sucky in relationship when people aren't all in, when people aren't like 100% and you're 100%. Like that is the kind of epic relationship that we actually all want, where there's full acceptance and full revelation and full transparency and full vulnerability and full safety and security to just be who you are and how you are. Um, but a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have that, and then they're doing the bare minimum to get by, But we genuinely want that. We want to be fully accepted and to be fully known, and not just fully accepted and fully known, but to be fully appreciated for how we are and who we are, our flaws and all, right? So good, bad, and ugly, recognizing that there's capacity for growth over time. We're not just going to show up in our relationships and be like, you need to be perfect and I need to be perfect. No, but there's room for growth and there's room for evolution and development. Like all of us want that to be known and to know and to be loved and to love on that level, you know? So breadcrumbing is just doing the bare minimum uh to keep somebody around. Um so yeah, anyway, thought it was an interesting term. Kind of like a situationship. Anyway, okay. So identity, meaning strong sense of identity, also gives us a shared understanding of purpose. And I use the term direction. So we have a direction, we know where we're going, and that gives us a sense of fulfillment as well. And so we can understand who we are, where we're going, what we are about, and that fulfills us on some level, right? So that's again having a well-established personal identity, sense of like meaning, it acts as a really strong foundation for healthy relationships in our lives. Okay. Because it helps us know and express our authenticity, our authentic selves. We can be ourselves with other people. It helps us to communicate clearly and confidently our boundaries and effectively, right? So people will hear and listen. When we show up in like these, we're angry and we're upset and we're, abrasive or polarizing, and like it's hard. It's hard for people to receive that. And so having a strong sense of identity and self puts us in a position to show up well, to be assertive, but not to be, sort of crazy out here with it. We don't need to do all that. And then, of course, it helps us to face and navigate challenges in our lives well. So, that's when we are strong in our sense of identity. And if we are not, we need to Sankofa, right? Sankofa, we need to go back and get it, right? Um, and we'll talk about some of the results here. So when we don't have a strong sense of identity, we can experience some of these things, right? Inner conflict, right? That's when when our heads and our hearts disagree, when there's a disconnect between our heads and our hearts. Maybe sometimes we think we're doing things that don't align with what we believe is good and acceptable. I see it that way, right? So we're acting in ways or we're treating others in ways that aren't aligned with our internal judgments, like what I think is good and acceptable or what I would want for myself, right? So I'm treating you like this. I wouldn't want anybody to treat me me like this. I'm using you for what you have, or for what you can give me. I'm not showing up in a way that I'm giving you anything or whatever. But I wouldn't want anybody to do that to me. So there's inner conflict when we don't have a strong sense of self. We can have loss of sense of self, so becoming sort of overly invested in our relationships and losing out or forgetting or not paying attention to our needs and our wants or what's really true for us in our lives. So it's like, oh, I really wanted to travel the world, but then this other person comes into our lives and they're like, oh, no, I really want to stay here for the rest of my life on this rock. And you're like, okay, well, that's not honoring what your internal desire is, right? So you can lose yourself in that space. We call it codependency. And I remember countless times when this happened to me with platonic relationships and romantic relationships, but specifically in romantic relationships. When I was a teenager, I liked this boy. I wanted him to like me so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be all things him. Like whatever he's doing, I'm doing. If he's playing video games, I'm playing video games. He's playing basketball, I'm playing basketball. He's playing soccer, I'm playing soccer. Whatever he's doing, I'm doing. And I was like, do I even like this? At some point, I know. I was like, I don't even like cheeseburgers. Why am I eating this? But he's eating cheeseburgers, so I'm eating cheeseburgers. Like, hello, he's all things him. Um, cheeseburger burgers are all of a sudden my favorite thing, right? But we can lose ourselves in that space. And it can happen on many different levels. Like romantic or not romantic or whatever the case is. Even at work sometimes, we compromise. We compromise ourselves for the sake of our bosses, our supervisors, our managers, or team leaders, or to get ahead, to get promoted. Things like that. Like if we don't have strength and honor for who we are and how we are, that it's really easy. I think there's a saying, let me say it properly. If we don't stand for something will fall for anything. That is the saying, and it's so true. Like without strength in understanding who we are and what we are about, we can adopt and entertain a lot of thing. right? So sometimes we need to Sankofa, we need to go back and get our backbone or go back and get our assertiveness or go back and get our sense of values and principles so we can stand on them. And yeah, that boy, I had to pivot real hard, real fast because I was losing who I was. So another misaligned values, another place where we can fall short when we don't have a strong sense of identity and meaning in our lives. And that just means we can connect with people who have really significant differences, and it can impact and erode our values, our core values, right? So sometimes it can undermine like our growth capacity. Um, and even feelings of closeness. Like I was talking with someone recently and they were like, "Oh, I believe in like it was like gypsies or crystals or something like that." I don't believe in that, but not that I don't believe it exists. I believe it exists, but I don't subscribe to that, sort of ethos. And I found myself kind of like probably not gonna spend as much time with this person anymore or talking to this person. But I thought about it in terms of connection and how when values sort of like cross over, they don't quite connect, how it can naturally lead to like distance. We naturally veer towards things that resonate with us, that connect with us, that are similar to us. And we can create, feelings of closeness and intimacy in relationships when there's aligned values. Not that there can't be that. I mean, people can always overcome those things, but it's easier. It's easier when we have, um, yeah, like just more similarities and so on, and strong sense of identity as well. Um, so exhaustion is another one that I really like, and I think this one goes under the radar, and I wanted to highlight it here. When we don't have a strong sense of who we are, we can become really tired very quickly because it's exhausting to like fake the funk, to always have to be on, to be trying to be something that we're not naturally. And that I'm not talking about growth. I'm not talking about like growing in and developing skills to be in the world better or to be a better version of yourself. I'm not talking about that because that's going to take time, energy, and effort as well. I'm talking about the like faking it, the like floating through life, trying to find yourself, like where you fit in, where you belong, but not based in anything fundamental to yourself, based in the feedback that you're getting from the outside world, right? So, oh, I should be this way because these people are this way, right? Oh, I have these friends in school and they are goth. They dress all in black, so I should dress all in black too, right? Not rather than you knowing in yourself that you like all the colors of the rainbow and you want to dress in all of them every day, and that's what's going to bring you joy and fulfillment, and just being okay with that and hanging out with the people you want to hang out with regardless. And I mean, they're gonna they're gonna have to accept you or not, right? But that constant trying to like be a chameleon, and that can be exhausting, and it's inauthentic and it's incongruent and it's exhausting, right? So even just recognizing that there's room there to go back and get a stronger sense of your identity and who you are and your willingness to stand in who you are and to stand in accordance with your values, regardless of what's going on around you. Right. And I'm not talking about being like dog-headed and all those. I'm talking about just your core sense of value, of worth, of expression, of personality, and being able to cultivate that to a point where you're able to stand in the world and be comfortable regardless of what is going on around you and accept others doing the same thing at the same time as you, right? Because that's what's going to build those healthy, strong, fulfilling connections that we want to strive in, and that really do provide for us a sense of like purpose and joy and fulfillment in our lives. Who's chatting? Kimberly Dawkins, hello, welcome. How you doing? No worries. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Chetty, you mean that the way we have to code switch, incorporate the yes, code switching. So I did a presentation a couple weeks back. Yeah, corporate environment, and I said to them, I don't code switch. So if y'all wanna, if y'all wanna leave now, y'all can leave. I don't do that. Okay. I'm just gonna talk however I talk. And when I talk, and people are like, but yeah, you have this degree and that degree, and you come highly this and that. I listen, I'll be professional and respectful as the rest of them. I will, I promise. But I'm not code switching. That's not what's happening here. What we're not going to do is code switch. Okay. And code switching goes far beyond our language. It goes to our presentation, how we dress, how we walk, our tone of voice, those kinds of things. If we're doing that naturally and it's of value to us, then that's very different than code switching. Code switching is doing it for the other, right? Um uh to to what is it? To be accepted by the other. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. All right, say my name. Let's jump in. Oh wow. Time just gets by. Uh, so say my name is a pretty popular saying, I guess. We have some media here on Say My Name. I think what I want to highlight here more than anything else is that many of us who live in racialized skin have felt the impact of um, insults and the erasing of and the criticisms of our identities, of how we've been, who we've been, where we've been, all that kind of stuff. I think colonization involved um, so much relocating, so much disorientation, so much um, yeah, just like so much renaming. There's just so many layers of loss of identity when it comes to colonization. And there are people today who still believe that our existence started at this slave trade thing, and we aren't always able to go back and find a lot of the information that either has been stolen or destroyed or that came down through oral tradition that really help us to know about who we have been historically, right? And so I think it's become increasingly important for us to well, survive, yes, but for our mental and emotional health, really, for us to go back and to reconnect, Sankofa, reconnect with some of the pieces of our identity that are really, really meaningful. And there's this whole like resistance movement, right? Pan-African movement, to go to like preserve the names that we've carried on through our old oral traditions and reclaim them and rename ourselves by them. And I wanted to highlight how important the names aspect is because our names have such deep meaning, right? Like if we really understood our history, but our existence before the slave trade, we could connect back with that, and we'd probably have such a different presentation of our story from beginning to end that it would really impact how we are in the world. We have different ideas about unlimited possibility. We have different ideas about our potential. We have different ideas about how we treat one another and ourselves. And our names are one thing that we can start with. Um, so there's a few things here. Say their names was part of the what is it called? Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matters movement. And they highlighted just police brutality. And this has been going on for years and years and years, but George Floyd and the capturing of that on video and the dispersing of that to the world really brought it to a head. And they were like, no, we're gonna stand for these people that have lost their lives that at the hands of police brutality, and we're gonna call people forward to account for what they've done. We're going to say their names. We're going to give them humanity. We're going to give them identity. We're going to give them historical place or a place in history. And I think that idea there, and it's very, very, targeted and very American, I guess. But I think that idea really resonates with identity and how we equalize and how we humanize ourselves. Because when we say our names, we're saying something. We're saying something over and over. Names matter. Names are like one of the only things you're going to hear in a large crowd. Names matter. People pay a lot of money to wear people's names on their backs, right? And this is not, I mean, if you wear designer stuff, that's not to offend you, but to raise awareness and to to help you recognize that names are important. They're important, they're valuable, they're identity forming, and um they are behind many movements and many songs, right? I put the Destiny's Child picture up there just because it's a song, it's a popular song, but I think the idea behind the song is so powerful, right? It promotes the importance of saying a name. They identify and connect us. We want to be connected with certain people, and when we shy away from taking ownership of certain people, that means we probably want to forget them. We don't want their existence to be part of our lives, right? And so there's a connecting aspect to names that is very relational and that impacts and affects our capacity to feel approved of or to be seen or to feel heard or any of those things. That's all relational stuff, and that all affects our emotions and our feelings and our mental health, right? It's like, oh, Genevieve, yeah, I know her. Oh yeah, I know Genevieve. Yeah, yeah. It's like Genevieve, no, never, no, never, never, no, 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 right? And so this idea of like your name being something that is powerful and that is grounded in um, such a significant part of who you are. Kunta Kinte, I'm sure you guys have heard of Roots. If you haven't, it's a book series as well as a movie series, and you guys can go and watch it. But Kunta Kinte, he's the main figure, and I think he demonstrates one of the bravest accounts in history of like understanding the power of his name. They were whipping him, they were beating him, and they were like, "Your name is Toby or whatever," and he's like, "Nah, B, my name is Kunta Kinte." Like they're like, "What's your name? What's your name?" And he's enduring like this torture and this torment, and he answers with his ancestral name, knowing and understanding that even as he's being beaten, that name is so precious to him and to his identity and to like who he is fundamentally that he's willing to receive that treatment, to hold on to his name. It's just that valuable to him. He's willing to, sacrifice his body for what it represents. So that is that, I mean, say my name is more like say your name, right? To say your name, to say it loud and proud. Like I am, such and such. And if you know the meaning of your name and it resonates with you, it connects with you, then say it loud and proud. And if it doesn't, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes and I'll rush through the next few slides, but um be willing to revisit, to Sankofa, to go back and get something that more closely aligns with who you are and how you want to be and show up in this world, how you want to represent yourself, how you want to leave a legacy. And that might sometimes mean, and many people have done it, it might mean adopting new names. I went through a naming ceremony with the group that we traveled with in Ghana, and they gave us new names, additional names. It was so powerful to connect with the meanings of some of those names and to really begin to embody seeing ourselves in a different way, as strong, as courageous, as having unlimited potential or what have you, or as royalty, as majestic, and so on. So say your name, right? Say your name is say my name is a say your name as well. I know you guys are on mute, but if you guys want to, you guys can say your name, because your name is just so powerful. Let me rush through these two. Yeah. So names identify language, culture, identity. Yes. They can tell you and tell others where you belong, who you belong to, right? Oh, that's so and so's daughter, that's so and so's son, and so on. So it's an extension of who you are. Language, culture, identity, who you belong to, where you are from. Uh, of course, yeah. Language is a big thing. So if your name has 16 letters, then you're probably not from Ireland. What you stand for. I remember one time my dad said to me, "You are from the Alao family," and I was like, "Okay, I don't know what that means," but it meant something to him to tell me that, to let me know, like, this is your heritage, this is your family, this is where you're from, so you don't do such and such. I think he was talking about cursing because he was always like we're smart people. We don't curse. Um, and then how you do life is like, um, who you're connected to in the community, where you go, and that kind of thing. So your name has a significant impact on that. Our culture gave up our spiritual or religious beliefs Yes, absolutely. Indians, for example, were also colonized, but they refused to give up their religion. Yes, absolutely. So they hold on to, and many of the rest of the world actually. So I was doing some research on Asia as well, and some of those traditions, traditional belief systems are still very much in place, even though the attempts were made to colonize, and they weren't necessarily displaced in the same way, but yes, a lot of other cultural groups have maintained their spiritual and faith-based um, practices and traditions over time. And so even saying that, like the spiritual aspect of ourselves and how that's so fundamental to identity and to our sense of well-being and to our sense of who we are, right? So yeah, it's such a good point. Okay, so let's let's maybe I might skip this. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Shetty. Thank you so much for that feedback. Um, so, as if you weren't sufficiently convinced that names are not arbitrary, I'll just briefly highlight this slide because I wanted to say um, that names have both positive and negative connotations, and so there are names that we don't name ourselves because they have very negative connotations attached, and then there are names that have power that limit us in terms of power, access, and create barriers for us. Okay. And so many studies have been done, resume studies, healthcare studies, you know, education studies. If your name is on an application and it sounds black, you are less likely to be called for back for a job. You are less likely to be called in to take a test to get into that educational institution. You are going to be treated a certain way when it comes to the healthcare system. These are factual things. Like we're talking studies, research studies that have been done over time, over and over. They've been replicated over and over with the similar results. Okay, so names do present power differences. They do create barriers to access, or barriers, I should say, for us to access to education and so on. And so we have to recognize that there are political and social aspects to our names as well, right? And so if you can control names, and this is the whole point of colonization, then you can erase cultural significance. You can disrupt people's relationships and their connections back to who they are and how they've been to their spiritual roots, right? And that can create like such a sense of displacement, right? It can create these unequal like interconnections in our societies, right? You're not going to make as much money or you can't have that job or whatever. And then it breeds other policies like, oh, we need to have, policies that include racialized bodies and racialized peoples because they've been excluded over time, hundreds of years. Anyway, you get it. Right. So names are powerful. They can create access or not, or deny access. And I love this example. We were in Ghana and we tried to get a reservation somewhere, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't have any room." And then we met someone who they called, and they were like, "Hey, I'm such and such and so. Can we get my friends in?" They're like, "Oh yeah, sure. Send them, send them over." And we were like, "Clearly, our names don't have that kind of clout, right?" But they can create access to or barriers to. So just wanting to highlight that piece in terms of like our disconnect from the past. So the Sankofa piece, like we need to go back and get it because if we have no like fundamental sort of grasp on our names and our identity, then we don't have that access to the past and the wisdom that can come from the past or the strength of self that can come from the past. Um, so. Okay, so this is my full name that I have on here. I hear a thing out there. This is my full name, and I wanted to just highlight my own journey of reconnection because I get it. Many of us have been given English names to fit in. Um, but even when I was growing up, I thought about education, opportunity, and so on. Like my mother was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have all that with this fancy white people name, Genevieve." But my dad was not having it. He was like, not like you're gonna get all the African names." So my African names are Kafayat, Ola, Yinka, and then when I went to Ghana, Ama Abrefi were the Ghanaian names given to me. So I just wanted to shine a light on um, the idea of reclaiming and being proud of the names that we have been given. And then my own journey towards that because it hasn't always been this way. All right. I want to get you guys out of here in the next couple of minutes because I did say that it was going to be an hour long. But um you guys give me a couple extra minutes and then we'll get out of here. Okay. What does your name mean? And if you could choose a name, what would it be? Okay, so this is the question that I want you to answer for yourself. What does your name mean? And if you could choose a name, what would it be? So if you don't like the name that you have, or if you don't know the meaning of your name, um, what would, yeah, what would your name be? So that's just for you to hold on to. All right. Decolonizing names. There are people here that you guys probably recognize. Malcolm X. His name was Malcolm Little, and he changed it to X because he was like, I'm not keeping these people's name. And then Dr. Umar Johnson, and I put Snoop Lion there because he's sort of a modern day example of how people have decided to change their names and identity or connect back to African culture. Okay. Last slide for you guys as we close today. Um, this is mental health strategies for reclaiming identity. Okay, so now I want you guys to sort of take this in as like a beginning stage for you, or a beginning. Hold on one second. Ooh, okay, as a beginning stage for you, okay? So, name exploration therapy. I'm a therapist. There's a lot of different therapies, but name exploration therapies focuses on research and research and reflection on the meaning of names, specifically your name, and then making decisions about how you want to um, make changes about that, right? How you want to like fully accept that, how you want to embody that, how you want to reframe that, and so on. Um, Cultural connection is sort of engaging in traditions and language and community storytelling in sort of spaces and places and things that connect back to culture, African culture, or whatever culture you resonate with the most. But this is about African culture. And then, of course, affirmation practice, using your name with intention. Um, and again, similar to name exploration therapy, using your name like for the purpose of empowerment, and empowering yourself. Sorry, one second. Ooh, okay. Um, and then, of course, narrative therapy. Therapy is another form of therapy. It talks about rewriting your personal story with a focus on strength and resilience. Mindfulness and meditation. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. And how to do that in terms of names would be like using your name and these cultural symbols like Sankofa in your grounding practices. So being able to like say your name, talk about your name, spell your name, and use that in terms of like adopting or connecting back to some of these cultural truths, right? Or cultural principles or African proverbs or things like that. So doing that mindfully, thinking about it as you meditate, right? So it's just like, oh, okay, can you see your name? Can you say your name? That kind of thing. Okay, chats. Um, yes. And Chetty is I was waiting for you I've been waiting for you to say this because I was like, I don't want to out you or anything like that. So Chetty has thrown out there that part of part of this mindfulness, this meditation, and some of these creating intentional affirming spaces is traveling back to Africa, traveling back to the motherland, doing so perhaps with a group. Chetty does groups and group travel to the motherland, um, to different countries, and that can be a powerful experience for connecting with your heritage, connecting with pieces of identity that you may not have chance to connect with here, and reclaiming, right? We're talking about Sankofa, going back and getting what you've forgotten, what you've lost, or what you don't even know you didn't have, right? So Chetty, I will make sure to send out your information so that people can connect with you to know how to book one of these trips, and do the work of reclaiming identity, that is so powerful and effective for our mental, emotional, and relational health. Thank you for that. Um, and then reading and personal research, of course. I mean, there's so many books out there that you can read. Get your hands on one of them and just read a page a day. Read a page a day about um, your heritage and your identity as a Black person, African person, Caribbean person, person in the diaspora, that kind of thing. Sorry, you know what? I didn't explain that clip. So that clip was actually from what is his name? Alfonso Schomburg. I love this story. He, as a child, he's of mixed race and he grew up amongst whites. And as a child, he asked one of his teachers, like, "Hey, can you teach me a little bit about my black side because I don't really know a lot, and you guys all teach like American history." And that doesn't resonate with me. And his teacher was like, "Oh, there's nothing significant that Black people ever did, and you don't need to know about that." And he was just like, "What? Yeah, sure." And so he spent his life's work was going to retrieve information about significant and impactful Africans who've done things in the earth. And they built a whole Schomburg Institute of all of these like artifacts and articles and letters and proof of how Africans have done so much for the world. And this is, of course, pre-transatlantic slave trade. And so we're going back in history, far, far, far back. But it allowed for us to access some of those pieces that we can Sankofa go back and get, right? And have tangible evidence for. So I wanted to highlight him. And Sankofa, go back and get it. Again, wisdom, learning from our past to build our future, to build our mental health, going back to get those pieces, dignity, identity, sense of pride, sense of self, sense of worth, sense of value, going back and getting even some of those spiritual practices, those traditional and historical things, traditions that, those traditional things or historical things that can help us to show up in the world differently today, honoring of ourselves, honoring of each other, honoring of our needs, honoring of our emotions, our feelings, honoring of our full selves, right? These are the things that we need to go back and retrieve, go back and get so that we can show up in the world in powerful, impactful, and positive ways, right? It's not wrong to go back and get what you've forgotten or what you've left behind. And if we do not learn from the past, we are liable to repeat the mistakes that have been made. And so we want to go back and get it. And my final message is our past is waiting to be reclaimed. So Sankofa, Sankofa, go back and fetch it. Thank you guys so much for being present. I'm going to stop the recording, but I want you guys to stay around and chat with me if you so desire. I do realize it's late. So I was like, it's like 9 o'clock. So if you guys gotta go, I know, I get it. I totally understand. Um, but thank you guys so much for joining and for being present for us to chat about Sankofa, going back and get it. And thank you guys for chatting in the chat. And if you guys have any questions, I'm super, super open to chatting with you. And if not, then have an amazing evening and check out some other Black Mental Health Week conversations that are taking place. A lot of people are doing a lot of things. Um, Candy's like, "Hi, Jenny." Um, so yeah.